PAX East was full of some really interesting Heavensward information, and they showed off some of the brand new zones as well as AF2 and the brand new relic weapons. Not only that, they let us into some of the development behind both the Astrologian and the Machinist, as well as some hints about the fourth job that they had in the works. We were also told about the release date for Heavensward, but I'll keep that until the end of the video. Let's talk about the three new jobs: the Dark Knight, the Astrologian and the Machinist. The Dark Knight, as we already know, will be a tank. The Dark Knight will be an MP based tank and will use spells from the power of darkness to buff or power their weapons. Dark Knights must manage their MP throughout fights in order to use their abilities, otherwise they will not be able to do anything. The Astrologian, the healer, actually has two stances. They never really explained what these two stances are, but we can assume that one stance will be for the Astrologian's tarot cards and the other will be to wield their star globe and to deal main healing. What's also interesting is that they showed off some of the early concept art of the Astrologian. As we can see, they meant to have some kind of docking mechanism for their cards, which drew some really strong resemblance to the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. The Machinist is the ranged DPS job. The Machinist has many different gadgets to play around with and can place attachments onto their weapons, kinda like buffs such as heavy thrusts to increase their DPS. What's also unique about the Machinist is that they can use different turrets which can debuff enemies or can also be used to support your allies. So the Machinist is basically an extension of the Bard. Whilst developing new jobs, they also had to think about the different kind of roles that they will be filling and specifically what was needed to cater for the current game situation. Tanks and healers were definitely needed as there were only two of each in the game so far, but we were also lacking an additional ranged DPS job to compete against the Bard. What's really interesting was the decision for the tank role. Believe it or not, Square Enix developers were torn between the Dark Knight and the Samurai. Yes folks, Yoshida basically confirmed that the Samurai has been on the drawing board for some time and may have made it into patch 3.0 instead of the Dark Knight. Now, they did not say if the Samurai currently is in development for the future or not, but as they were deciding on whether or not to have the Samurai or the Dark Knight in this expansion, we can place a bet that we will definitely see the Samurai at some point. This also confirms that in the future, the Samurai will most definitely be a tank. They also showed off some new AF2 job armor and the new relic weapons, we assume, and here's a whole array of pictures for you to see. But that's not all that they had to offer. Let's go over some of the background story behind the Heavensward expansion. Ishgard has been under attack by the dragons of Giovanni for over 1,000 years. A war between the dragons and mankind, called the Dragon Song War. Within this Dragon Song War, there are many secrets and legends related to the conflict within this region, which also directly relates to the 7 evil Worm Kings, which we will meet and presumably fight throughout this expansion. If you've been reading up on the lore of this game, you'd know that the 7 Worm Kings are in fact the children of Midgardsormr. So let's go over some of the newer areas that we will be able to explore in the Heavensward expansion. I won't be covering the main city of Ishgard at all, as the majority of us have already seen the city interior during the ARR trailers. Firstly, if you're a Final Fantasy VI fan, you might recognise this massive behemoth construction somewhat. This is, in fact, the guest-style floating continent. Judging by the colour of the environment and the concept art and in-game footage, we can assume that all images I'm showing you right now are of the floating continent. It does seem to bear a striking resemblance to Allegan technology, with the dark grey floor patterns along with the deep neon blue trimmings. Funnily enough, the guest-style floating continent in Final Fantasy VI was raised by none other than an emperor and Kefka. We all know that the Allegans had many emperors during their time who became corrupted with power, so one can only assume that the floating continent will become the next 24-man raid and be some form of the continuation of the Allegan history. You also have to remember that the entire Crystal Tower arc was also based on the Allags. The first ground zone that they showed us was the Coerthas Western Highlands. In the far distance, we can see this ginormous dragoon statue. One can only assume that this is of a legendary dragoon who participated within the Dragon Song War and fought honourably. There's also another section of the Coerthas Western Highlands which appears to be like a bridge. And we're actually riding another flying mount, the Griffin, which comes with the Heavensward Collector's Edition. Another area within the zone houses this massive fortress or castle covered in very large clusters of ice. We can assume that this is some form of Ishgardian architecture, and those massive spikes were raised as defences against the Driveon dragon forces. Back on our Griffin mount, we can see that we're flying above an Ishgardian camp, which also happens to have a broken aetheryte. And we're now in the main city of the Coerthas Western Highlands. With all that I've shown you, I can say that this zone is going to be absolutely huge and jam-packed full of content and some gorgeous vistas where we can see the sun and the ice glaciers. Next is the Driveon Forelands. The atmosphere gives off a hot, steamy Amazon jungle vibe, or some other rather tropical environment. We can see a lot of cloud forest, which is a low-level cloud cover which is persistent in many tropical climates, such as rainforests. It's very mountainous. Just like in Coerthas Western Highlands, there are massive architectural structures and buildings. This particular one houses a few dragons you can come kill and farm. In the same zone, the atmosphere can drastically change from a more tropical scenery to a more mountainous and volcano-ish atmosphere. We can see that this cliff we're on currently looks like it has molten lava veins. Even the ground itself is darker and has a red hue to it. And if you pay close enough attention, there seems to be another building of some sort within an actual mountain range. Our next destination is the Driveon hinterlands. They never showed much of this zone, but from what we can tell, it looks like the homeland of the ARR race. It appears that there's some homes or some actual civilization in this area. This building could very well be the entrance to the ARR main city, a kingdom built within the mountains. The Churning Mists is the next zone. This seems to be an area in the sky, a floating landmass all over the place. Literally a city in the sky. Though it more looks like an ancient ruins or a lost civilization more than anything. Here's some more large dragons to fight and kill. There's also this huge dark cloud near this landmass which constantly has thunder and lightning flashing inside of it. I wonder what's going on inside. We're now back on the ground again for the Sea of Clouds. This zone is rather plain. It kind of reminds me of Outland Osea with dried up grass and ground, with a little central camp, followed by some floating islands that we can fly in between. They also discussed the Alexandra raid, but they only really gave information that we already know about. It will have both a normal and a hard mode difficulty, with the hard mode giving greater rewards, and it will also have a different loot reward system than what we currently have in the 2.x series. The benchmark for the Heavensward will also become available in April, and it's around 9 minutes long. Just like the first benchmark for Realm Reborn, it will also serve as a character creation tool so we can create our ARR characters and import them into our game if we so wish. And of course, what we're all waiting for, the release date. The release date for Heavensward is the 23rd of June 2015, which also happens to be my birthday. The early access, however, for those who pre-order the game will be on the 19th of June. Talking of pre-orders, Square Enix will officially start the pre-order campaign on the 16th of March, which is in fact next week. So guys, tell me what you think so far about Heavensward. Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, as it will greatly help to support the future of this channel, hopefully. I also do have a few more videos which I will be uploading soon, one of which is a Reddit interview between two FFXIV subreddit mods and Yoshida with even more interesting news and information about Heavensward. There's also a new theory crafting video which hopefully people will enjoy, and a few more random videos to help fill up the space. So thank you for watching guys, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.